Welcome to the 21 Convention, Orlando, Florida, 2017. This is Socrates. I'm your guest host for 21 Studios Radio. This is the legend and the man, Ross Jeffries.
Pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be one of the
Fantastic.
speakers.
I was telling you earlier that I actually have a rich man's problem at this point. I actually not only was able to meet you, you're one of the people I was really looking forward to meet,
you.
but I'm limited to about 30 minutes of interview
Thank you.
time.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Let's start off with your origin story. Let's talk about that so people, our viewers, can kind of understand.
Very quickly, because
Yes.
there's other things I want to move on to. I came from a background where I had no role models about how to deal with women. God bless my father, and his memory be for a blessing, as we say in the Jewish faith. But he had no clue about how to handle women, and he was gone most of the time working. He wasn't gambling or carousing. He worked 3 jobs to put food on the table because my mother didn't work. What I did observe was a terrible marriage where they were constantly attacking each other. He would do his best to embarrass her because she was not sexual with him. He'd say in front of the company, "Oh, I don't get any." So, and then as I grew, I was, in my eyes at least, horribly ugly. I'm 6'2", about 210, a little bit of a belly. I was 6'2", 125 pounds in high school. And I was so ashamed of my body, I would put paper on the mirrors so I wouldn't have to look at myself when I got out of the shower. I would compare my arms size to the arms of the women around me, the men around me, and I would think, why would a woman want to be with me? Why would she want to be with an inferior product? I'm not even a man.
Right.
I would look at my arms and say, these aren't the arms of the man. This is not even the body of a human being. I had terrible shame. And that was my basic background all through high school, all through except college, the very end of college. And I lost my virginity at 22. I went 5 years without even being touched by a woman. I'm not talking not getting laid or not getting kissed. I mean, I didn't even feel a female
contact.
touch. No human contact. You have to imagine what that hell is. And most guys, I think, can't relate to that.
No.
They cannot. And women cannot relate to it. I tell them this and they say, you're kidding. So I was determined. I remember one day visualizing myself in a dark hole, miles and miles beneath the earth, and a ladder, and climbing out one rung at a time. I remember thinking, one day I will get out of this, and when I get out of this, I will go back and take any guy who's in that hole and get him out. I remember thinking that way before I ever found the solution to the problem. And then I stumbled onto NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and that provided me a way not just to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but to remove the tunnel completely.
Now, just to stop you really quick, this is before the internet. This is before YouTube. This is before any of the video contact. What was the format?
I wrote a book called How to Get the Women You Desire into Bed. We did it on literally, we took it to Kinko's copies, 8.5 by 11. I would put it on the kitchen table. My mother would staple the cardboard covers, stuff it into envelopes. I would take them to the post office. I got on a lot of TV talk shows. I knew how to bait. There was a magazine called Radio TV Interview Report. It was the Bible of every TV and radio talk show. And so I wrote an ad. I took my last $450. I wrote a full-page ad. Women hate nice guys, says sex book author. Interview the man who turns wimps and geeks into supercharged macho studs. See, I had that talent.
Yeah, you really did. I mean,
it's
remarkable. This is where I'm saying it's a man. When we talk, and I don't mean this in a derogatory part, the grandfather of the community, everything. This is before the community. This is before all this.
People would send orders to a P.O. box. And I would I would send them snail mail.
I was about to say snail mail
catalogs, and they would send me checks. It was crazy. And the thing is I learned copywriting from my mentor, Gary Halbert. Okay. People think, well, Richard Bandler is your teacher and your mentor. He's the father of NLP. But every penny I earned because Gary taught me how to write copy. Gary lived in Florida, and Gary said, your students are full of shit. Your stuff is bullshit, but I like you. And he took me under his wing. And the ad I wrote to sell my book that launched my career was The Amazing Seduction Secrets of a Skinny, Ugly, 6-Foot Geek from Culver City, California, that could get you all the hot, sexy women you ever desire, no matter what your looks, financial status, or age. Boom.
Boom, yeah.
And that ad over a course of 10 years made me hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's fantastic.
So that's my origin.
So you come from a background which you imprinted really negative marriage views, relationship views. You had tremendous self-confidence issues.
Traumatic.
Based on everything. That sort of trauma, and then zero human contact in an age in which you weren't able to gather information, relate to each other, have any of that.
I was very isolated.
Unbelievable. And then you did something about it.
But you know what? I give credit to my mother, because my mother said, if there isn't an answer, you be the one to go find the answer.
So you had a single source of inspiration.
And my mother also said, one day I was sassing her, I was like 6 years old, and she said, if you don't stop it, you'll grow up to be an iconoclast. I said, what's that? She said, it's someone who goes around kicking over other people's sacred idols and ideas. I said, cool, I want to be an iconoclast. That's what I'm going to be, Mom. So thank you, Mom. May your memory be for a blessing.
I'm going to get the quote too, because I want to remember that.
May your memory be for a blessing.
May your memory be a blessing. I'm going to put that in my back pocket.
That's
I
a
love
Jewish
quotes
thing,
like
yeah.
Fantastic. And this is what I'm talking about, the stories and the sheer admiration for the people who were pathfinders for everything else. And in all honesty, I came well behind all that. And so you have this idea of these people as figures and have the ability to actually physically meet.
Yeah, well, I also always had a sense of a destiny. Even when I was a little kid, there was a show called The 20th Century, hosted by Mike Wallace, and they would profile great men. I thought, one day I'm going to be a great man. And even when I was really lonely working crappy jobs, I remember thinking, this is not what I'm meant for. I have a destiny. I'm meant for something bigger.
So say that again, because I think that's terribly important. You actually were able to project in the future. And
I
you had
thought
a sense,
I'm meant
you
for
put
destiny.
something out there.
I always believed I had a destiny, and I was meant to be a great man. I was put here for a reason. I really believe that. And what's kept me passionate after 30 years, you saw my talk.
Right.
Did you not?
Yes.
Did I appear to be having fun and be passionate?
No, you were having fun before you even got on stage.
Right,
One of the few. I know I get all worked up.
Right.
You were just amped up like a
and
racehorse.
So what keeps me, why would I stay passionate after 30 years? Why do I have charisma? I think I do. I'm not blowing my own horn. Why do people look at me like, oh yeah? Because I truly believe I'm walking my path. A man who is walking his path, a man who is walking his destiny, is very, very difficult to stop, and I'm stubborn as a mule. I hate quitting, I hate quitting, I hate quitting, I hate quitting. I just will not quit. And that donkey-like stubbornness kept me going. I don't like to quit. Quitting is the worst poison I could swallow.
I got to pause right here. Do you hear that? Listen to it again.
I hate to quit.
He hates to quit, and he had a vision. And that transformed your life.
Yeah, and look at how many other people have been transformed by it.
Yeah, I'm sitting across from you.
Now let's get into the red
I
pill.
know, I was just about to
hate
say,
it.
this is the time to drop. All right, let's drop that bomb.
Yeah.
What is your opinion of the red pill community?
I think there's some good stuff in it. First of all, let me tell you what I like. Warning men about how women can be duplicitous and women can be manipulative.
Absolutely.
And the games that women can play is vital. I was saying this, though, back in 1988. I said it back in 1988. I said, the only time I put a woman on a pedestal is when I can look up her skirt. I warned guys. I said, many women are seriously dinged in the head. Don't expect that she's going to love you for who you are.
Right.
I said that back in 1988, for Christ's sake. So please understand, no one out there think of me as a simp or a white knight. I'm the furthest from that you can get. So I like that, and I think hypergamy is very true. That's a fact. It's not arguable.
No, right.
But then what red pill gets into, it gets very reductionist. It takes complex human behavior. Humans are very complex creatures and very nuanced. And it reduces it down to evolutionary psychology. And to me, human behavior depends on the context you're in and the society that you're in. And it's very, very difficult to isolate it down to, oh, well, she left you because you were a beta or a cock.
Right.
There could be a million different reasons.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe the sex was lousy. Maybe you were, who knows? So it tends to reduce things down. And also when you come to the dark triad, this idea of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellian, as if that is the essence of what women come from. That to me is self-evidently not true. There's no evidence for it. And I'm going to say his name. When Rollo takes what he teaches and he wraps it in the mantle of science, when he refers to it as arising from evolutionary psychology, he's wrapping himself in the mantle of science. And when you do that, then your standard of evidence that you have to meet rises very high.
I agree. Now,
Hold on just one second. So your standard of evidence rises very, very high. I take great pains. You saw me in my talk 3 times. I said, I'm not teaching science. It's not true with a capital T. It's only my model.
You did it several times.
So my standard of proof is much lower.
Right.
So I would argue, first of all, I think evolutionary psychology is a soft science at best and maybe a pseudoscience at worst. But let's grant that it is a science. There's nothing in any evolutionary psychology paper or study or textbook that says that women always have dark triad traits, and that's the essence of who they are.
And they don't have, and I come from an anthropological background, and having lived with and dated an anthropologist for 10 years, literally in the Smithsonian. And I've gone back, and this is something Rollo and I actually share. We actually read the white papers, and go back, and I can see any number of studies where they say it. And I would say down the dark triad is a human condition.
Exactly right.
It's a human condition.
But people don't listen to that. That's MGTOW. MGTOW people say it's women only.
Right.
And
that's completely
and they wind
false.
up proposing a master gender instead of a master race.
What I also find is that they don't look to the other side. Women have hypergamy, absolutely. Men have hypogamy, the same general things, and very similar. Where we're the same, they're very similar. Where we differ, they take sex-based criteria.
Right.
And that was part of my talk. But what I find disturbing is that they're out to de-pedestalize women, but then they deify masculinity.
I say they demonize one gender in order to deify another.
Fantastic.
That's how I put it. And so when you say things like AWOL, all women are always like that. Now, I know the excuse is going to be, well, we didn't say they always do that. We just say they're like that. But in reality, they're saying they always do that.
It's reactionary to not all women are like that, and so they do that as well.
Right.
My criticism is that they kind of go this proverbial rabbit hole, that they go down and they stay there. And so my talk was literally about our biological imperatives, about getting through that. And in all honesty, this is where you and I differ, and I find it fascinating.
Go
One of the
ahead.
things I want to talk about.
Tell me.
I'm very pro-child, and I struggled with that.
Right.
Up to several years ago, where I sat down and said, I don't know if this is for me, for any number of social reasons, personal reasons, and everything else. I made a choice. You made a choice at a relatively young age, because I know your background.
Yeah, I don't want to have kids.
You don't want to have.
I'd make a lousy father. Selfishly. Actually selflessly, because I know I'd make a lousy father.
Right. And how's that affecting your life now?
Not at all.
And how about your viewpoint going forward? Because I think it's fair to talk about.
Listen, I have nephews who are the most wonderful young men I've ever met. They are like my best friends, my sons, my brothers. I would always be holding my own children up to their example, never meet it.
Right.
But the reason I never wanted kids is, first of all, I thought I would never be able to have the creativity and the creative energy to do what I wanted to do and also pour it into a kid.
And so
but I want to circle back because I'm not done.
Okay.
I'm not done with Red Pill. I'm not done with it yet. I'm not quite there. So this idea of dark triad, you can't find that in any of the evolutionary psychology literature. I would challenge you to find any study that said women. That's Rollo's extrapolation, his deduction.
It's human nature.
Okay,
it's absolutely human nature.
But it's his deduction. And so when he extrapolates from that, he's taking the science and he's layering his opinion onto the science, but wrapping his opinion into the science. That's where I have a problem.
And to be honest, this is what I think the service he does provide. The anthropologists don't take the step forward. You're not allowed politically to take one step.
Okay,
and if you read the papers, sometimes it's really interesting. They get to be really kind of humorous. Others, it's really dry. But the problem is that there's nobody segueing that to popular literature to make it beneficial.
But when you segue to popular literature, you take the risk of twisting the science.
Absolutely, and you could be
that's
wrong.
what I think. With all due respect
and I think
to
it's
him,
fair
that's
to
what
measure.
I think he does.
I have no problem with the measurement.
That's what I think he does.
Okay.
And finally, the idea of solipsism. The definition is not strictly correct. Solipsism is a term from philosophy. Okay. There's a study of one of the branches of philosophy is epistemology. It studies how we can know things.
Right.
And solipsism, from that perspective, is a form of radical agnosticism in the sense it says the only thing we can know for certain is our own minds. Not that our own mind is the only thing that exists, it's the only thing we can know for certain. Right. Other things could be a projection of our mind. Metaphysically, it means the theory that the only thing that exists is ourselves, and everything else is our creation, the figment of our imagination. And so I think the definition is not properly used. He's taking the definition and giving it a different meaning.
And I'm concerned, it came up in one of the speakers when we talk about Nietzsche says, God is dead, Gott
Right.
ist tot. That we remove religion and the morality base that comes from it. And then invariably what comes in, if you don't have some other morality structure, nihilism comes up, the self matters more. And we live in an age of extreme narcissism.
I'll put it
all the
to
way
you
around.
this way. I said to one of the students at dinner, I said, this whole society is revolving around the dark star of narcissism.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just
I
women.
Drink to that.
I've had a drink.
Drink to that.
Never better said. I'll take credit for that. It's not just women. It's men. It's everybody. And narcissism is held up as the ideal, the way you should be. And so I don't think this has got to do with some inherent trait in women or inherent trait. It's what's being programmed into our heads. How can we resist the power of popular American culture? Popular American culture, by the way, is the greatest weapon against radical Islamist fundamentalism that you could have.
I would sit down and say
They
it's
love
literally
this.
American culture is the epitome of mankind. I mean, we have had centuries of warfare from
Pop culture.
All of it. Oh, and you're pop.
Let me tell you what I mean.
Yeah, please clarify that.
I've visited Israel twice. In
Okay.
Israel, the Palestinians wear Nikes, the Israelis wear Nikes. I remember god-awful video of ISIS executing someone. May they burn in hell for it. I don't believe in hell. But they were wearing, I noticed one of the executioners was wearing Adidas.
Right.
American pop culture is our greatest weapon. Instead of bombing other radical fundamentalists,
No,
we should
absolutely.
break into the radio and beam Britney Spears and drop Adidas.
Adidas.
and
I mean, literally
that's what you do.
carpet bomb it. Yeah, with
that's what you
sport
do.
shoes. Yeah, absolutely.
So those are my real problems with red pill. The ultimate red pill to take is the red pill of compassion. And by that I mean to see that we're ultimately in the same boat. That beautiful woman was born wearing the same thing you were the instant you were born,
Skin
naked.
suit, yeah.
One day something's going to happen. She's going to die. We're subjected to the same gravitational pull, the same atmospheric pressure. And whether someone is frustrating you or giving you what you want, they're humans. They're not demons on the one hand or divas on the other. They're human. Mm-hmm. And that red pill of compassion is very difficult to swallow because it means you have to look at the other as being a human. And this is not an easy thing to do. It means you have to modulate your anger, particularly when you've been genuinely hurt. You have to modulate that and say, I'm hurting, and that's a human being. That is something that takes a very mature mind. And the other big red pill that I challenge everyone to take is the red pill of saying, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know the answer.
Yes. Yeah. Let's move on just real
Yeah,
briefly.
sure.
Who are some of your heroes and people you look up to? Some of the mentors you had.
Mentors or heroes, different things.
Both. If we have time, both.
Oddly, I have
I
some
don't want
odd
to limit
ones.
it. I don't
Harry
want to limit
Houdini, the magician.
Okay.
When I was a kid, because he was such a great self-promoter. He knew how to promote himself. Muhammad Ali. When I was a kid, loved to watch him fight. Again, a great promoter.
Right.
You wanted to see him get
And
his ass
skilled.
beat.
Both are masters.
Yes.
Self-promoters and masters of their field.
Clarence Kelly Johnson, who's the head of the Skunk Works. He did the
SR-71,
impossible.
yeah,
SR-71,
yeah, I know him well.
F-117. These guys made the impossible possible.
Yes.
One of my heroes, Voltaire, the famous French comic playwright. Voltaire said something that inspired me when I was 19 and had a huge heart-on for this huge-titted girl at El Camino Junior College Library. I was reading something by Voltaire. He said, give me 5 minutes to talk away my ugly face and I'll bed the Queen of France.
I use it on a regular basis.
I loved Voltaire. Voltaire was one of my heroes. And finally, my father.
Where we heard this before.
My father.
Do
I'll
tell.
tell you why.
Yes.
My father, for all his flaws, and he had many,
Yeah.
he fought World War II. The greatest evil the world arguably has ever seen. He fought the Nazis. He was a combat medic. He was not allowed to carry a gun.
Right.
So
At that
imagine
time,
everyone
yeah,
shooting at you.
right.
He had to crawl out under fire. And my father told me he literally shit his pants with fear many times.
Right.
Literally.
And still kept going.
But he did his duty. My father never ran away from his duty. He said something interesting. He said, after a while, I wasn't fighting for the country or freedom. I was fighting for the guy on either side of me.
And the guy he had to get to.
Even though I hated war, he forbade me from going into the military. Okay. So my father did his duty, and he never ran away. He broke his back to feed 6 kids, my cousin who lived with us for 5 or 6 years, my mother, he broke his back, he worked 3 jobs. Towards the end of his life, when he was very feeble, could barely move, I said, Dad, you lived in a sexless marriage, you broke your back working, did you ever think of running away? And suddenly the life came back into him. He pulled himself up, I'll never forget this, to as much of an upright posture as his bent and broken body could do. He said, he got angry, he said, never. I would never want to run away from my children, never run away from my family. If I had the strength, I'd do it again. And then he sunk back down into his coma of pain.
We're going to have to end there, but
yeah.
To sit down and think that is what you imprinted on. We talk about the trauma, the imprintation. This is the man you became and the life you lived.
Yeah.
What a fascinating
Thank
story.
you for the honor.
Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Let's give it another 10 minutes.
Okay.
I still have liquor here.
Yeah, okay.
So you take this with the imprintation of your father as the man, and you
One of
actually
them,
said as a hero. Talk about your mentorships as your educational system and how you.
Oh, cool. So Gary Halbert, who is my marketing mentor, Gary taught me the most important lesson in all the copy. I write all my own copy, with the exception of some of the emails that my ops manager, I've trained him to write in my voice. Gary taught me one thing. If you want to be successful in print marketing and writing ads, I'll tell you what it is. People do not have time to understand your pathetic subtlety.
One more time.
People do not have time to try to figure out your pathetic subtlety. Gary taught me that. Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP, took me under his wing and taught me neurolinguistic programming. By far the great teacher of my lifetime, who has totally changed my view about what it means to be human, Shinzen Young, my meditation teacher. When I got exposed to him, my mother was dying of liver cancer. My business partner of 15 years, who was like a father to me, cheated me in business, betrayed me, and I was dying inside, and I got exposed to his work. Shinzen taught me that pain and suffering are not the same thing, and that pleasure and satisfaction are not the same thing.
Right.
And I've had the direct experience through meditation of the self as a thing disappearing, that I am not a thing in there called a self. I've had the direct experience of self and world dissolving as separate entities. And I've experienced myself as a flow of activity that arises and vanishes. And in that moment of vanishing, I've had it very rarely. And 10 years of meditating, I've maybe had an hour or two of it. In that moment of vanishing, there's a profound peace that goes beyond human understanding. Can I get a glass of water? Is that possible? Or yeah, do you understand? So Shinzen has been far and away and he's the most brilliant human being I've ever met. And he teaches poetically and mathematically.
Tell me more about the instructor, because a lot of people may not know him.
Shinzen is a mathematician and a scientist, and he teaches Vipassana. Vipassana is Buddhist. Essentially, the elements of Vipassana are focus. You stay focused. It's resolution power. You look with great clarity on what's going on. And then equanimity. You don't fight what's going on. So you don't repress the pain, but you don't feed it with the story.
Because anything that's external will actually pass.
If that's only a philosophy, if you have the skill set of meditation, then see, it offers a beautiful third choice. People either run from pain or they tell themselves a story about it and feed it. But the direct experience of the sensation of pain, without a story and without suppression, there's no suffering. I was crippled with grief when my mother was dying. I remember laying down, I couldn't even sit in meditation. I did what he taught, and I felt all the pain, tracked all the sensations. Here's the sadness, here's the emotional exhaustion. And 45 minutes into it, it just broke up into a flow and a wave of bliss and satisfaction. And for about 2 days, I carried a very subtle peace beyond understanding. I was also very sad. So it really had a profound impact. It's made me a much more compassionate human being. I have a deep schema from my family of having to make people wrong. And for a long time, my career, I made enemies because I said, that was part of it was so much of a fish in water, so much of how I saw the world. I needed to go out publicly and make other teachers wrong. And for that, I offer an apology. It's one thing to make another person to take their ideas and rip them apart. It's another thing to personally attack them and rub their noses in it. Yeah. So for that, I apologize. But also, that was my momentum. And through meditation, I was able to see that. And over time, these habits have what I call cognitive momentum and emotional inertia. And when you meditate, they no longer arise so strongly that they distort your perception and drive your behavior.
Okay. But you have to embrace that feeling. You have to exist it. You just can't allow it to go there.
You have to experience it without fighting it or feeding it.
2-second drink.
Cheers. I don't drink alcohol.
Oh, no, sir. Now we actually get to clink glasses. Properly. It was just an excuse to let me
That's all right.
A little more whiskey.
That's all right.
No, fantastic. So let's move on to that.
Sure.
So you have this instructor and mentor. How then did you start actually that in your actual life? What was the process there?
I started to meditate, and over time, what it did is I realized that I never dropped the spiritual poisons I carried when I was that ugly guy who couldn't get women. Those poisons were still in me. The poisons of resentment, envy, contempt, despair, and horrible agitation.
There should have been like tremendous jealousy and rage as well.
There was envy, not rage.
Okay.
Envy, and there was rage.
Why not? Okay, got it.
Envy, not jealousy. And these were all intense spiritual poisons. So to this day, after I do my meditation, I say a little prayer. I don't believe in a higher power, but I say, please take this envy and transmute it into genuine happiness for the prosperity of others and genuine gratitude for what it is I have myself. Please take this contempt and turn it into genuine respect and admiration for others and respect for myself, a humility, a humble respect for myself. So I do a ritual where I take each one of those elements and I transmute it. And over time, it's gotten to the point where I am not that person I used to be. I've seen that need. And I think part of the problem, I don't like the word spiritual. Whenever I hear the word spiritual, I reach for my 45 because it's such a sloppy word. But I think that aspect needs to be addressed of all these poisons that are in every human being. And I think, here's the other thing. I come from a discipline of being a healer. Half of what I do with my students is healing work. Many guys who come to this movement, this community, are traumatized.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's not a matter of alpha and beta.
Absolutely.
For me, it's not a matter of alpha and beta. It's a matter of traumatized and non-traumatized. So if you take a traumatized guy who's been sexually abused or battered or whatever it is, or he's seen the example of his father enraged and he thinks, oh, that's being alpha, I never want to be that. I'd rather be a victim than act that way. He's confused being abusive with being dominant and being a leader. I have to untangle those for him and lead him on a path of self-healing. So if you say to a guy who's deeply traumatized or wounded, well, you should act this way, it's just giving him another thing to hate himself over. I think that's not being addressed in the community.
Because you carry the wounds forward.
Yes, I think that's
wounds,
not.
It's not even scars.
Being
it's still
wounded
a wound.
doesn't make you less of a man.
Right.
It doesn't make you less of a man. It's not a reason for shaming. A lot of these so-called white knights never experienced a real connection. They didn't have any intimacy in the home. It was a cold home. And so they're going to reach for it anywhere they can find it.
Well, and I think in many cases it's that they're coming to the rescue of their mother.
To whatever that, I don't know if I'll go that far, but to ridicule them with a name, this is my other problem with both MGTOW and Red Pill. They take complex creatures like humans and they put them into cartoon categories like a thing called a white knight or a thing called an alpha or a thing called a beta. They're reductionist in their nature. They take complex creatures like humans and they reduce them down to cartoon characters. And
I know I'm guilty of that
not the
myself.
way to wisdom. That is not the way to truth. To have the patience with confusion and not knowing the exact answer and to say, it's sort of like this, takes a lot of discipline. But this is exactly the kind of thing that Red Pill and MGTOW do. They reduce people into categories, and humans are not that simple. They're complex and they're chaotic, and you cannot find truth through that method of doing things. It just doesn't work that way. So to have the patience to say, this is someone who has some of these qualities and some of these qualities, that takes being able to say, I don't know.
Right. And I know I'm guilty of it professionally because we try to categorize things, and the other thing is it's too convenient to use shorthand. And I think we miss the human
It's
element.
a bad way to understand humans.
And it lacks, and I think in particular when we talk about dynamics between people, it lacks empathy. I talk about, I design buildings.
But empathy is for pussies and simps and betas. That's what MGTOW is essentially saying. It's for simps.
I've been labeled Captain Save-A-Ho. I've been labeled trying to build a better beta.
No one dares label me that because I'm the OG. I'm the Godfather. You don't label the fucking Godfather, motherfuckers.
There's a 45 in his hand
Right?
somewhere, right? By the way, nice choice of weaponry.
Oh, thank you. I have a 45. You should never discuss
No.
weapons.
No.
I
There's
have a
no doubt in my
45.
mind. No.
I have
Man
a
that comes out and
45,
says it.
a Smith & Wesson model. They gave it to LAPD. I figured if the LAPD can shoot with it, I can shoot with it. And then I have a long Colt, a 45 long Colt. It's a cowboy gun. It's a 45 caliber, but it's got a long
barrel,
cartridge.
right, yeah.
It's fun to shoot. Women love to shoot it. It's got a big roar and a big
Is
flame.
it a single action where you have to cock it? Yeah, the old
yeah,
cowboy
lots of
cock.
fun. And if it runs out of ammo, you just
Oh,
whack someone with it.
The old school pistol
It's a
whip.
chunk of metal. It's
Yeah.
a heavy chunk of metal.
Yep,
None of this
absolutely.
composite Glock shit.
We're not going there. Ross, are we at our 30 minutes mark?
Are we at our?
I hate
let's
to
wrap
say it.
it.
Let's tell you what. Let's end it here so we're on a good mark.
my
Absolutely
pleasure.
fantastic.
It's
Thank
my
you
pleasure.
very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
And let's stay in touch and stay
We will.
friends.
We absolutely will.
I respect you.
This is Sock signing off for 21 Radio.
Ross Jeffries here.
Absolutely. Before we go, I did you a disservice. Where can others find you and Paul?
Easy. rjcoaching.com. That's rjcoaching.com.
And what services and products do you actually provide?
I have a group coaching program, so you get to talk to me that's me, not a trainee, not a flunky, not an apprentice, not a novice on training. Talk to me
Meet a
4
legend.
times a month for $197 a month. That's insane.
Now, let's go back. Where can they find that?
rjcoaching.com.
Fantastic. Thank you very,
Thank
very
you. It's
much.
been my honor.
Pleasure. Thank you. Sock signing off. Take care. Thank you very much.